But according to the situation in Nigeria, how much do we need to spend to bridge this gap? Is 2.6 trillion naira every year. And how much are we budgeting? 500 billion. And not all of it we spend, because it's just the budget. At the end of the day, we spend maybe 50% of that. But the deficit, you can see, is very wide. 2.6 trillion naira. That's what we need to spend annually on education. And you now look at a long-term plan. Well, I just told you the budget, the entire budget is 500 billion, but the requirement is 2.6 trillion. And if we are to really fix this gap that you're mentioning, we need to spend 60 trillion naira in 10 years. 60 trillion naira in 10 years. That is if there is no corruption and there will not be insecurity, because the more insecurity situations we have, the more we need to spend for the education. So things being equal, we have to spend 10 trillion naira in the space of 10 years. And if you look at the gap now, looking at numbers, there are 122 million Nigerians that fall within the school age, 24 years below. 122 million Nigerians. 82 million of these are either out of school or have not joined the school or are intermittent in schools. And this represents the gap in education. 82 million children, and there are more younger people in Nigeria than the senior generation. And that tells you that the future is really not so hopeful if you continue in this way. Now we've seen the insecurity, how much we are spending to combat this insecurity. And if we had spent this much in the past for education, we would have spent this much to tackle insecurity. So if you don't spend for education, you are going to spend more to tackle insecurity. So you have to choose which one to pay for. And it becomes much easier to pay for education because it saves lives. And it costs you the money of spending for insecurity and paying ransoms and people being abducted. All this insecurity is a cause of lack of spending or enough spending on education. And education, we cannot fix it. There is no way we can bridge this gap without spending. And it's not just about having this body number of people in the classroom or having these buildings as schools. It's about the quality. So that the gaps are at different levels. Now the gap in terms of access and the gap in quality. The quality is from three perspectives. You need to look at it from teacher quality and motivation, and the curriculum, and then the facility. Now you look at what's happening in Nigeria. The least thing you become in Nigeria is to become a teacher. People will look at you and say, oh, you're a humble person. Oh, you're a poor person. Why? Because you're a teacher. People call me and say, oh, you're a university teacher. Oh, that's humble things you can do. Oh, okay, you don't have much money. I understand. Yeah, okay, you're just doing okay. And that's the perception. But it's the most noble thing to do in a society, to become the inspirator, someone that will inspire and groom the future generation. Because the society has downgraded the profession. And the people will start looking for NNPC jobs, all these jobs. If they couldn't get it, they now accept a teaching job. So now the quality, how do you attract the best brains to become teachers and give them the right motivation? And then we talk about curriculum. The curriculum we still operate in Nigeria is 1981 curriculum. 1981. Can you imagine the gap? We live in an era of electric cars and spaceships that go to the moon. But what we still teach people is how to draw cockroach and how to draw these things that are not relevant in classrooms. So that we have to really have an overhaul in the entire system in terms of the provision. And this leads to the facility, because modern educational system requires modern facility. And with the insecurity now, we are going backward again and again. We are taking ourselves backward, because now what's happening with the insecurity and abduction of pupils from schools? It means extra spending, not only on teacher, not only in changing the curriculums, not only in facility, but in providing security. Some people will not even trust the government to send their children, even though there are provision for security. People will not do that. So it's a vicious cycle. You fail to provide for education, and now you are creating insecurity. And now insecurity is making the access to education even more expensive and even more difficult. So every societal problem, like the previous speaker mentioned, is centered around education. Fix education, you fix everything. And every year, there are 5.2 million Nigerians being born annually. Do we have a matching educational facility to provide for this ever-growing population? So we have to look at the population explosion, the population growth, because I just mentioned that it's 2.6 trillion naira we need to spend every year. But this figure is going to increase if you continue in this trajectory, if you continue in this growth, 3% population growth, 5.2 million. If you give birth to 5.2 million children today, it means you need to spend to provide for the educational spaces, healthcare, and every other provision in the next 4 years, I mean immediately, for some of them because they have to access healthcare. So we have to look at how much we grow, and then we match that with our provision and our resources. The government is spending, like I mentioned, 500 billion. According to the budget, it's not what is already being spent. But if we are to spend that, what we've been spending over the years, there is no corresponding improvement in the quality. Now you go to classrooms, go to the typical rural school and see students or pupils squatting and sitting down on the floor with the ceiling, without ceiling and without roofing. Some of them, they study under the tree. And you see the congestion in the classroom. And there is still demand for new facilities and new schools. And so according to some researches, it was found out that whatever we spend on education is not giving us results. There is no corresponding improvement in the quality. So the idea now is what is the way forward? Some of the things that we could do, like I see what this foundation is doing, is now, okay, how do you now help some people that couldn't get to even public school, or that in public school they cannot continue, and put them in private school. Now, if we keep bringing children or pupils from public schools and putting them in private schools, so we are already killing the public school. So no one will, yeah, they're dead already. I mean, there is no hope for them anymore, because everyone now, because the only option is private school. If you don't have money, you don't go to private school. This foundation can sponsor some people to go to private school, but cannot sponsor everyone. What about every other person? Because education is a right. Everyone must get it. It's not an option. It's a right, it's a mandatory. In fact, you should be punished. Parents should be jailed if they refuse to send their children to school. All these things you are seeing, insecurity, is because of failure to educate our citizens, our population. So what I'm saying, we have two options. Are we going to, now how about abolishing the private schools and make the public school the only option? All these, all right. Yeah, it starts from why people go to school. Now, if we say that we are not going to give you a job based on your qualification, a lot of people will drop out of school. People are in school because they think they will get a job with that certificate. People cram things just to pass the exam and get the A and pass it and just get the certificate, because that certificate will give them the job. After finishing from the university, you forget almost nothing what you've studied in 4 years, 5 years. So why do people subject themselves to this difficulty and these challenges for this period of time and to get this certificate and forget everything? Because of the job. So if we have to change the curriculum, we have to change the qualification for jobs. Now when it comes to working in juicy and lucrative places, private sector, public sector, we don't care about your certificate. When you come to us, we judge you based on your skills, based on your ability to do things. And then that is how the university will now change, because we still reward certificate. You see someone with first class coming out but cannot do anything. Computer science, engineer, software engineer, but cannot do anything with his hand in this century, because the university system is just training people to get a certificate, not to give them the training, because the society is rewarding the certificate. It's not rewarding the skill. If you are the best computer guy, but you don't have a certificate, no one will recognize you. You cannot be put into that position. They said the qualification, you must have a degree. They even went further and say you must have 2-1. You must have first class. Degree grade is nothing in this world now. No, it's just about what you can do, not about your ability to retain your retention. It's not about your retention, but it's your ability to do things. So for us to really have an overhaul in the curriculum to make it fitting. We have to change the NUC guidelines to allow flexibility for universities. There are lots of universities that want to become flexible, change their curriculum, but they are mandated by law to stick to the NUC regulation. NUC should be changing its curriculum every year. That is to be as a conservative. My friend here said after 10 years, right? But the world is very fast now. Things keep changing, innovations. Now our graduates finishing from schools but joining the real life as strangers. They don't know nothing. They have to learn afresh. Even if you study accounting, when you join a bank, they have to train you over again. But if you look at advanced universities, especially in developed world, whether even in terms of employment or recruitment of lecturers or teachers, they look at experience. Now, Sunusi Lamida Sunusi, a CBN governor, is employed. Why? Because of his experience. Solodu is employed now as a lecturer. Why? It's not because of his qualification. They look at experience. You've seen it practical. And now they are tapping from these Nigerians' brains out there, teaching them about life skills, real life skills. I also tutor in Oxford University online. And I see the kind of curriculums they operate. It's way out of what we teach here in Nigeria. I want to become creative in Nigeria, but I cannot because I'm told to stick to this syllabus. And yeah, if I'm not doing that, it's against the law. So like, the system entirely has to change, but it has to start from the job market, labor market. Labor market should not be requesting. Let's see NNPC now, when they are publishing their next opening, and say, okay, we are not looking for any certificate. Come, we'll give you practical problems, you solve it, who solves it, get the job. You see how the university keep changing, because we give you practical and real life problems.
I have to get there somewhere. I'll get back to
So we have to grow our population according to our resources, according to our capacity. And that's why I say we have to bring it down at the micro level and look at it from household. Household, you should grow your population according to your capacity. The problem challenge is people give birth to children that they cannot afford to cater for. You have 100,000, or maybe let me bring it down, 20,000, and you have 20 children. That's 1,000 naira per month, per head. How can you give this child the right education? You put them on the street and they become a liability. The government cannot do much. Even if the government is spending 2.6 trillion, I told you this figure will keep increasing because population is increasing. And population means liability. What we're going to do now is to designate or earmark or peg the number of liability per household income. So if your income, let's say, is 100,000 naira per month, cumulative income in a family, they should not give birth to children beyond 3 or 4. No, that's why I say it's a policy. You asked me about policy, right? It's a policy. There should be a strategy on how to implement that. And that could be a big conversation. And it could be a big conference to talk about how to step down that. It involves cultural, social institutions, and it takes time to educate people. Because what we want to do is to set target for our population growth. It's our failure to manage our population in the past that led us to where we are. Because whenever there is a gap between population and resources, and what we budgeted is only 500 billion. Why? Because there are too many demands. If government would have to spend 1 trillion naira today, there would still be huge gap in education. So this solution is the policy. The second one is the long-term solution, is long-term policy. It might come in 20 years' time, it might come in 30 years' time, but the idea is population is a potential resource, but only if it is empowered. Other countries that use their population for growth is because they provided for them. And the reason why people are desperate about money, because everything is centered around money. People will kidnap, will do all these things to get money. But if access to basic life standard is not centered on money, people wouldn't care to do these kind of bad things to get the money. So the economic system that said everything is about money is what brought us to where we are. So it's an economic system, it's a family system, and all policy has to be centered around changing the economic system and changing the family system.
Thank you very much.
Education is panacea to solving all security challenges. if we really have to maintain peace in the country, one of the easiest things to do is to provide level access to quality education. And because when you're educated, you will have value for your life. You have hopes and ambition, and you value your life. But when you are not so hopeful, you lose the value of your own life. And you don't value other people's lives. And people that are engaged into this banditry and armed gangs, they do it because they think that their lives are miserable, that there is no hope for them tomorrow. So that they think that death could be even solution to them. They get happiness, maybe they get rid of all these difficulties when they die. And that's why they engage in this kind of thing, because they don't have value. Because you have ambition tomorrow, you want to become someone. Rukaya wants to become something, to fix things in this world, right? She doesn't want to die. She will not risk her life because she has ambition. She has vision, and she wants to become something to fix things. And that's what happens. So education is what gives people hopes and value their lives. And that's why me and you said it, we agree that leveling the access through empowering the public schools. You mentioned that, right? And sometimes because there are options all the time, because there are private schools. Okay, and these politicians, policy makers, they always have option to put their children in private schools. And why should they bother about what's happening in public school? Their children are schooling abroad. They are schooling in best private schools. So they don't care about building the public schools. If you are to put together amount of money you spend for foreign private sponsorship abroad and private schools within Nigeria, that big amount of money in 3 years' time can really make a huge difference in public education system. If you can put a break for 5 years and say no private sponsorship, if you are to send your child abroad to study, you will not do that. If you are to send your child to private school, you're not going to do that. All resources have to be invested in public schools. Otherwise, if you keep empowering and providing alternatives, the public educational system will always be gone. It's already been killed, like she said, and it's not going to be revamped again. So I think, to me, we have two options. Either to privatize the entire educational system, or to halt or stop the private educational system for some period of time, and then see how this public institution could be improved in terms of access, in terms of changing the curriculum, facilities, remuneration, motivation for the teachers. So that's why I said the foundation here is maybe trying to sponsor children to put them into private schools, but the rest will have to attend the public schools. And these people will not have the quality education, and they will not have value for their lives, and they become threats. They become resources or potential uses by some unscrupulous forces that may come from outside or inside Nigeria, and use them for any kind of insecurity, violence, or violence. Yes, cycling again and again and again. I think it comes down to punishment and giving the students the freedom to air their complaints without fear of being punished. Some students, they face this kind of abuse or insults from the lecturers, but they are afraid if they report it, they might become victims. Either they will fail the course, or another lecturer will chase them again, or they may be sacked from the school. So there should be a free system where students should feel free to complain about any behavior or misbehavior from teachers or lecturers, and that's what is lacking. This could be independent of this university, which could be an independent panel, maybe a system or subsidiary of NUC. Like for every university, there should be a panel of people that would be receiving this kind of complaint outside the university system. And then this will be investigated. In most cases, they kept mum, they kept quiet because they are afraid they will end up becoming the victims. And it comes down to the ethics and values of the lecturers. There should be continuous reminder to the lecturers to know that these students are trust to them. and that their values, their reputation is more important than any kind of emotion or feelings they might have at the moment. And there should be also mechanism for transparency in conversation, in meeting with students, so that there should not be a conducive environment for this kind of insult, and there should be an open system of communication. This could be through email or through an open space meeting, but any other meeting or engagement outside this system is not allowed. It's illegal, because opportunity is what make this possible. If there are no opportunities, these things are not being possible. And sometimes it's two-way process, because if I understand, Okushi, you referred to the physically challenged set of special interest people. People with physical challenges are considered to have some deficiencies, but that's not correct. That shouldn't be the case, because everyone has certain level of deficiency, because you may see some of these deficiencies, or sometimes you don't see them. I should talk about mental health issues. Everyone has, most people have some mental issues, but you cannot see this deficiency. You might give them this opportunity thinking that they are normal, and deny people that you think they are physically challenged, you deny them this opportunity. So I think there should not be segregation when it comes to opportunity. Even if you are physically challenged, if you can really solve real life problems, you can solve problems, you should be given the chance. And even in educational system, there should be inclusion, there should be access. If you are moving on in a wheelchair, there should be an access to what coming up here on the stage, going to the toilet, going into the lift, everywhere, even the classroom, wherever. There should be inclusiveness for physically challenged people when it comes to education and opportunities. There should even be some dedicated slots for physically challenged. I remember when I was at the Commonwealth, we advocated for this inclusion. The same way youth are clamoring for 30% inclusion, women 35% inclusion in everything, in development issues. Let there be some inclusion for physically challenged. Because when you are physically challenged, it doesn't mean that you are done. You still have some mental powers, you still have abilities, you can think, you can solve issues. So I think it should be the case. I don't know if there's anything you would like to see apart from just providing access and equal opportunities for everyone. But that should be the case. But unfortunately, we don't have it. And themselves, they have this kind of self-esteem, low self-esteem, because I have these physical challenges. I cannot get there. I will not apply. I will not go to school. And people around them will put them down. And they end up begging and on the street and things like that. It shouldn't be like that. We should empower them, give them access, special scholarships. And I think maybe Itagwai Foundation should also allocate certain slots for physically challenged, to put them back to school, to integrate them so that they can also be empowered. We have the president here of the association that takes care of them. Maybe they can link with you to identify these people and give them sponsorship. I think before I talk about the policy, there's some actions we citizens should take. Because when we have problem or situation, we always think of policy and neglect what we could do by ourselves. One thing we can do is to become brothers and sisters keepers. When my child is educated, and I don't care about my neighbor's child if he's not educated, and this kind of negligence or ignorance about other people's situations is what put us where we are today. So before these policies start to work, getting things said, let's see what we can do about our own situations. And that's why I appreciate the Itagwai Foundation for doing something, for creating space for people to key in and contribute in fixing this situation. And then the policy. The policy has to be something entirely different, out of box. I started mentioning changing the job market, the labor market. The labor market has to stop rewarding paper, qualification. I want my student to tear their certificate, to burn their certificate.